Welcome to the Iron Edge, the podcast all about unlocking your full potential inside and out the gym. Today's guest is none other than Nicolas Cambi. Thanks for coming, Nick.
Ken, thank you for having me on, and great to see you. Great to catch up.
Yeah, it's been fun. Even just like the little catch up off the scenes before we got this going live. So let's just dive in. Obviously, I've known you a long time from strongman. You know, you started at 105. You're now at the heavyweight scene. I was looking at some of your stats. So it was America's and World's champion in 2021.
Yes, that was probably my big year.
Yeah,
in the 105 scene.
And then you hit America's in 2022, correct?
Correct.
And then after that was the jump to heavyweight.
Yes.
Yeah. So did you just feel like you'd sort of ran your course in 105?
I think that there was a few items, especially in 2022. I think the first piece was just potentially kind of outgrowing myself, just becoming too big. I spent 10 years as a 105.
Yeah.
So then I started to get to the point where my weight cuts were maybe 5 pounds and then went to 10 pounds. And then when I got up to 23-pound cuts, that's when it was a little tough. And then I kind of started reevaluating because I really love to compete. And the years that I competed the most is when I split time between like amateur heavy and pro 105. So I thought that was a good time, but also just the lure of the kind of like the challenges of a whole new world. And I just wanted to just put myself in a new place. But also too, I was a little bit plagued with injury in 2022. Every time I cut, I got really dehydrated, and that really affected my SI joint. So I had to, of course, bail out of 2 big competitions that year, which was really tough. But I talked to my buddy Sean DeMarinis. He was a 4-time America's Strongest Man. Yep. You know Sean.
I know Sean, yeah.
And Sean said pretty much, don't do what I did. Don't mess around the 105s too long. Go to the heavyweights. That's where it's at. It's more or less what he said. Yeah. And so I just thought go for the big challenges. And the great thing for being a 105 kilo pro through Strongman Corporation, we're always invited to compete at the amateur Arnold's. And so I thought that would be my first big test. So I had my eyes set on it. But in 2022, we had a lot of talks between me and Sean and my friends that it might have been time to consider heavyweight.
Yeah, yeah. Because it seemed like you just like you know, with the weight cut stuff, it's like the perfect example. Like, you know, if you're cutting 23 pounds, how much strength are you like? Did you find that you had a big strength loss?
If you do the refeed and the IVs and the rehydration correctly, I didn't feel too far off. Yep. Maybe 92 or 95% of where I was.
Yeah.
But for instance, when I went to, I think in 2021, I went to Russia. We didn't have the IVs. It was kind of interesting conditions. We had to, after we refed and stuff, that night we traveled 3 hours north, and I was exhausted just from the travel. So that was really hard to kind of recover from the weight cut. But also that's maybe at that point where it might be better. Like there's some other athletes, as I say, really closer to 231, but after a point, that's not really an option for athletes. And you kind of I just also want to keep growing. I do love putting on mass and being a big guy. So
Because what are you weighing now?
290 this morning.
Holy shit, dude. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you've put in a hell of a lot of size since, you know, even like the last 3-4 years. How much did you gain for going into the Arnold?
I was 275, and I was a fluffy 275. Yeah. I didn't put on.
Did you follow any type of plan for the Arnold, or just a case of I'm just going to eat and see where things go?
It was pretty much kind of the structured diet I had for 105, but then I added, there was probably added more meals on top of that. But I think I got back into more, thankfully got back into more pastas and pizzas on Fridays and just more enjoyable foods. But it was that first kind of bulk was probably the dirtiest out of all.
Well, it's sort of like you're taking the reins off and you're just like, oh, you're having fun again.
Yes.
So then after the Arnold, because I know you did the Arnold, correct me if I'm wrong, so you did the Arnold in 23, and then you did Was it Italy? Italy? Well, you did Arnold Europe.
Sure. So I took a little break. So got married. So that was a
congratulations.
Thank you. That was a big life goal. So I took time before and after. Then I started ramping up. But I was really having trouble finding that type of contest. I thought I would use kind of my Italian citizenship to kind of potentially start competing in Europe. So I was trying to find international shows in Europe, and those guys compete like every other weekend. Yeah. So it is an exciting scene if you can get into it. But I couldn't find any contest that would let me in. But I found the Arnold Europe show, which I later found out was a Magnus for Magnuson Classic qualifier. So I thought getting into that scene would be good. And I had to do like an international contest and podium in order to compete at Italy's Strongest Man without competing physically in Italy in one of their qualifying shows. So I thought that was a good route. So I did the Arnold Europe in Spain, ended up winning there. And then 2 weeks later, I did Italy's and ended up winning there. And then I followed that up with official Strongman Games later and made the finals.
Yeah, and then you did Giants Live after that last year, right?
Yeah.
Was that right? Was that the way around?
This past year.
This past year, yeah.
Mm-hmm. It feels like last year now.
The years just go nuts. It just feels like everything just passes all the time, you know? So have you had, to get a little controversial, have you had any backlash for the decision to start sort of represent Italy at all?
A little bit. The Italians got pretty upset.
Oh, they did? Okay.
Well, because originally they thought they didn't really understand kind of, I'm not sure if the promoters at the time really kind of explained, but I went through the process. I sent my old tax ID, which is actually my current tax ID. I wasn't really sure what my Italian citizenship stamp was because I was having really trouble time. I had trouble time talking to the Italian consulate to kind of sit where I'm at because it's been years since I talked to the Italian government or in any kind of fashion. And for some reason, I had in my head that we might have denounced this issue, so I didn't get drafted in high school. But then I ended up that was just kind of maybe something I made up in my head, or as a young. But regardless, we didn't exactly know what the status was. So we kind of circled back after Italy's. I finally got in touch with the consulate in January. We got a sense that. We actually got in touch with an officer in Rome. The Rome kind of approved the status, and it was never denounced. It was always intact. And then 5 months later, I got my passport. So
when was it? Because when was it? I'm assuming you were born in Italy.
Yeah, so I was born in Italy, lived there for 6 years. I grew up in Florence, and then when my parents split up, we moved to Boston. My mom was originally from the States, but she went abroad and met my dad in Florence and lived there for 14 years before coming back.
Yeah, okay. So let's talk about that. You know, I understand the immigration stuff myself. So how was it, moving across the world, like at 6 years old? 'Cause like for me, I moved at 25. This wasn't like the adjustment. There's still an adjustment period, but how was it at?
I think being 6 is kind of a tough time because you're starting to kind of grow a little bit of an identity, but then kind of a big major shift, and then kind of throwing myself right into kind of first grade, just not really kind of speaking a little bit of English, but not 100%. So I did have like kind of special language courses all the way up to like 7th grade. So getting the adjustment. But of course, at that time, I think there was a few actually, I was lucky there was a few other kind of international students at the time that were going through the Cohasset program or elementary program. But for the most part, of course, I got teased a lot. Of course, I ended up gaining a lot of weight. So, so it was a tough time until I really kind of fell in love with like sports and started getting involved with like football and baseball and wrestling. And that's kind of where I really kind of start hitting my stride and making like really meaningful friendships. But it was a big adjustment. You had to really assimilate to that. And I got told, especially going out to Europe's Strongest Man this past year, like, oh, you don't have an accent. You don't really sound like Italian. I'm like, well, I really had to adjust back in the 90s. Yeah.
Well, it's funny you mentioned the accent thing because that's a big one for me. And obviously I developed a hell of a lot more of a Scottish accent over 25 years than you potentially did with the Italian side of stuff. But as soon as I go back, like it comes back in droves, like to the point where I have to actually talk slow to my wife. If I just went home last month and it was that I came home, she's like, hey, you got to slow down a little bit and just like, enunciate a little bit more because you're just back in that Scottish sort of realm. Do you have any of that when you go to Italy?
So I've been trying to learn it back a little bit myself. I'm actually going to try to take courses probably at the end of the year.
Yeah.
But every time I go back, I just pick up pieces that I kind of forgotten. But the languages come back pretty fast to me. But I'm not fluent by any means.
Yeah. So getting back to like the whole controversy issue, like after like the Italians like athletes, like did they calm down a little bit or?
So right now it was kind of a little bit of a split. It was I would say kind of the former champion, kind of driving I think he already had a conflict with the federation, and he increased the conflict by making his own federation and making his own Italy Strongest Man for the year of 2024. So they made a little bit of kind of a divide. But I would say for the bulk of it, I think they do like the additional kind of representation. I was kind of born. I think after the fact, they thought for somehow there was rumors that it was like a loophole. They kind of squeezed me in. I think they might have not been kind of upset with maybe like a Alex Corletto back in the day because he represented Italy, but he was born in America, but then lived in Italy, was like part Russian. I'm not really sure. I think there was still a little animosity.
Then he was living in England at the same time. Like there's so many little bits and pieces.
And then supposedly there was another Romanian that did the same thing that won the Italy Strongest Man and didn't really do anything with the title. So, of course, I want to kind of represent my heritage, represent my native country. So I do want to kind of spread that out. But the Italian scene is kind of breaking out. Like this past OSG Europes, they had 5 athletes. So I think it's only growing. It's too bad I wasn't able to get there with of course, the bicep, hurting my bicep this year, but I'm planning to get back there in February.
Nice. So was that like a not prerequisite, it was like, was there, because I know with going to Giants Live, like, was there any conversation of like, hey, like, we've got too many Americans?
No, I originally went out to kind of seek out just so I already have like the American scene and understand that and what's that all about. But I wanted to open up myself for the European side of things because that's really a lot of fun contests. I wanted just to kind of open that out and just take advantage of the dual citizenship. When I kind of set them out, I just really wanted just more opportunities, and then just kind of manifested towards that. Of course, fitting in as the Italian, and then at OSG ended up being the second best European. So that's what kind of got me into Europe's. But I think just top 10 alone doesn't get into Europe's. But I think on top of all the other accolades, I think it made sense.
I think it's not as if like you've just come on the scene and you've like had a breakout year type of thing. It's like you've got a hell of a lot of accomplishments and titles under your belt. So I think that probably definitely helps your case, to put it mildly.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned the bicep there. What was the whole, because that was bothering you for a while, am I right in saying that?
I had a kind of forearm item. By Europe's it was during I was mixed gripping. Try to mix grip the fourth bar, which was roughly, I think, like 795 or 800 pounds. I say 800 pounds because it looks better, right? So, I was mixed. But that was my plan, and then it kind of snapped halfway through, and then I kind of switched the grips a little bit. I had like a viral video on Official Strongman. I switched the grips, and then I finally got it up. But from there, I wasn't really. It tore, but it wasn't. It was like a 1.5 centimeters at the time, but it was still strong enough to do the Vikings. And then I did the stones. It hurt a lot, but I was able to do 4 stones. And then from there, since 42 and I were the top 2, the top 2 uninvited Europeans from that show, we got the invite into Worlds. And then 2 days before I left for Worlds is when I found out that my bicep was actually torn. So through the MRI, but at that time I already kind of trained everything except the sandbag carry, and everything kind of felt pretty good that at least I should be able to give it a good run. So YOLO.
So did you end up taking it off completely? Was it completely off at that point?
So we're looking at Worlds. So I'll just kind of go through the days. The first day we had of course, the stone carry, I kind of tweaked it out of the gate, and I didn't have that great of a run. Even at my best, I really had a really strong grip group, so I think it wouldn't really change much. But I kind of tweaked it out of the gate. The deadlift went great, and then doing the sandbags, I was readjusting the first bag, and then it tore even more. So it went from 1.5 to 3 centimeters after finding out the results of the second MRI, and then from there, I made the conscious decision to get it repaired.
Yeah. Okay. So what surgery did you end up having then?
Distal bicep.
It was distal bicep, okay.
But I did also tear my forearm, but not off the bone. So that just needed recovery time to recover.
And then you said when we spoke before, starting the podcast, 14 weeks out from surgery, cleared to press. What's the plan?
Going forward?
Going forward now,
Yeah, so I think I'm unfortunately, I think I'm done competing for the rest of the year. I think by the time that I would feel good enough, which is around like the maybe 5.5, 6 month mark, the competition season is over. It's December.
Yeah.
So I might as well just carry over for next year. So my hopes is I was mentioned before, I want to go back to Italy in February. I'm looking to do like a record breaker and potentially like a seminar out there.
Yep.
And that'll be like outside of Pisa. And then looking to potentially get back into Europe and maybe run the table to get into Worlds. Yep. So I'm hoping, knock on wood, of course, that it all kind of lines up and I can get back into Europe, because Europe it was a fun show to compete at. A lot of history and a great crowd.
Where did they do that one again?
They do it in Leeds.
It was Leeds, yeah.
Leeds like the last 10 years.
Yeah. I'm trying to think, what did I do in Leeds? Yeah, it was Europe's first man Leeds. Yeah,
you did it outside.
We did it outside. It was one of the first years they did it there, and it was insane because I tell people the reactions, like the crowd reactions when like Terry and Eddie came out. I don't understand how it sounded like the roof came off the place, but then there's no roof. Like the whole place was sold out. It was a great experience, and like that's what I found with like Giants Live. Like the experience of competing there is just unlike anything else.
Absolutely,
like, there's literally no comparison. In terms of like how are shows in like Italy compared to stateside? For Italy Strongman, so I unfortunately only have one competition to base it off of, but hopefully I have many more. Originally, I was going to plan to do 2 competitions this year, so hopefully maybe going forward, maybe do 1 or 2 every year. But it was great ran. The equipment was great. Just like they had a lot of matching equipment. All the equipment was relatively new. Yeah. The stream was actually was great. They had all different angles. They had like a moving camera, and they had like a really enthusiastic announcer. Okay. Like, Mamma Mia, Nicolas Cambi, Mamma Mia. Like, so it was very entertaining. And they had great participation. So they ran it kind of like a nationals and a pro show together. So they call it like their novice or their rookie class. So they have the different weight classes, and then they have the pro classes. There's probably a few pros in each of the weight classes, and then the opens we had 6 guys, including myself. Okay. So it was pretty competitive. So they had when I competed, they had the champion of last year, and then a previous champion that won 3 times, and then 3 other upcoming guys. And one of the guys is actually Italy's for a lack of better terms, WWE champion. So he's their wrestling champion. So it was in Emanuele. So it was fun to have him there. That's cool. Was that one outside?
That was inside.
How was your crowd with it?
It was pretty busy. I think I had the biggest crowd actually. I think my father came, and then my cousins and aunts, and then some of my mom's friends came. So nice. I think I ended up having the biggest crowd.
How is the popularity of the sport over in Italy?
It's still growing. It's still relatively new. I think kind of what drives and what I learned through like the World's Strongest Man process is that if sometimes they're a little more keen to have certain countries represent if they air World's Strongest Man in that particular country. Yeah. In the past, they haven't, but I think this year they're airing World's Strongest Man for the first time because I competed. Sure. So which is great that it will help the sport in Italy. But right now, the promoters over there, they're of course partnering up with OSG, Strongman Italia's, and then they want to host like an international competition. And And for anybody that's listening, after competitions, they usually do great dinners with 8 or 9 courses of various, every meal you can think of. So start off with antipasto with a nice salad, and then pizza and a pasta dish, and then some sort of bistecca. So it's something to consider.
Yeah, I'm about to start competing again.
Would be worth it.
Yeah, I know, right? So outside strongman and all that's strength related, you said you're a recruiter.
Yes.
When did you start doing that? Straight out of college?
I did outside sales for a little bit. First I did gym sales, then I did outside sales for an auto parts company, and then I started recruiting. And right now I've been doing that for about 8.5 years. And when I originally looked at recruiting, it was more of a kind of a, realized it was kind of a stationary job that I could do remotely or kind of anywhere. So I wanted to learn that kind of like the skill of recruiting and be able to kind of take that kind of wherever I go. But it's also allowed me to kind of continue to be connected to the financial markets. And I was a finance minor back in my college days, but I really enjoyed the finance side of things. So it allows me to kind of be connected to the markets somehow.
Have you found anything in recruiting which translates into strongman?
I think I don't want to. Of course, I like to pat myself on the back here and there, but I think I'm a great networker. Just making relationships and follow up with people, just having kind of just various conversations and even asking the right questions. I think that's what's helped me, because a lot of times you don't go to contests and you interact with different competitors. You see what competitors do well, and just going up to them and having the confidence to ask them questions and make meaningful friendships. I think that makes it so. I think it really helped me in terms of the communication side of things as strongman, which helps me gain a lot of information so I can take that information to make myself big and strong and tan.
And then talking of communications, you also have your own podcast.
Yes, absolutely.
What was the driving force with that? Just
it was originally, I kind of thought myself, I wanted to kind of start growing my YouTube channel. So I wasn't monetized. So I'm like, if I get, you need a certain amount of hours on YouTube. So I'm like, hour-long podcast. There we go. But I also wanted to start focusing on, just better kind of speaking practices and putting myself in different positions that I'm not exactly comfortable with, or in terms of either asking tough questions or receiving tough questions. But I just wanted to be better, almost better for myself. And then it's kind of evolved into being able to kind of stay connected to different individuals, learn from some of the greats. So I was fortunate enough to have, like, for instance, like Mitch Hooper, like really early on, even before, I think it was, he just competed at Worlds and then just took third at Giant Slab, and then I had him on. So I had him on even before he won any big contest. Yeah. So that was exciting. But then I had the likes like Martins and Trey, and of course Colin now is a kind of a regular guest. And Colin's a wealth of information. So
the amount of stuff that Colin knows from strongman over the years is insane. But it's also like being able to see the growth of it through his eyes. You know?
He said that I think in 2026, I think he's 28 years in as being involved with World's Strongest Man. So it's,
I could see that, yeah. Because you see Colin in the background at, God, I don't know, like mid to late 90s. I think he was in like Mauritius in like 94, I think it was, or 93.
And then he competed in 97, I believe.
Yep, I think it was 97, yeah. And it was just funny, like he competed at Britain's and then he popped into Worlds type of thing, you know? I think he was the reserve at Worlds. And then ended up getting drafted in because somebody got hurt. Because I remember there was a medley, I want to say it was like 96, where I think someone got hurt, so they actually pulled Colin in to basically run with one of the guys, so like he had someone to go against. But yeah, what he's done with the sport is nothing short of mind-blowing to me.
Absolutely. And then he's really found the niche with Giants Live, and then it gives great opportunities for athletes like myself. Yeah. And I think only expecting big things, and really excited. I'm heading over to Vegas. So
that's my question.
Are you heading to Vegas?
I'm not, but I was going to ask if you were going.
Yeah. So Abigail, my wife, has never been to Vegas, so I thought it was a great opportunity. My brother works in Vegas, so I might get to see him for a day or two too. I thought what better time to go, especially when I'm kind of in this lull in terms of not competing. So be able to kind of watch the guys, but hopefully to see a 505 deadlift, that super awesome.
Who do you think is capable?
Sure. So it's interesting because we were talking about Graham Hicks. Colin and I were last week, and he was saying that the last time anybody's ever taken this much time to do it was Eddie. So he's the first like world's strongest man athlete, like high level competitor that has taken the time to go after this record. So I think Graham has the best chance. Ivan Makarov is going for his 6th attempts, maybe 6th time is a charm, right?
Yeah.
And then you have. Of course, some other kind of great. I think some other guys will probably get like maybe mid 1000s if they're pushed to it. But probably Ivan and Graham are probably the two.
Yeah, we posted Graham, I don't know, maybe a month or so ago, because he came onto the Cerberus as an athlete in the UK.
Oh, excellent!
And we threw up a post of him, and I said, could the deadlift record be in jeopardy type of thing? And it's interesting to see the responses from people because like. It makes me wonder how do I say this nicely? Like how in depth they are with the sport, because it's like, oh, it's a 50 kilo jump, that's a huge jump, blah blah blah. I'm like, yeah, but did you just see the speed that he pulled? 455 for a double lat, and it's like, I feel like everyone compares the speed of pull to like Eddie's pulls, like, oh, Eddie pulled X weight so much easier, and he only just got the 500. But I don't think they take into account like how everyone pulls is so different. Like if you look at Cerberus, you'd think Cerberus is maxing out at 320, but he's capable of 450.
Absolutely,
because the pull just looks exactly the same. Do you think that there's any weight in that in terms of like the speed of pulls relating to anything?
I think speed helps, but I think still Graham has some great speed.
Yeah.
But I think just more importantly, I think just the mentality is important. Like he's willing to sacrifice not going to Britain's, not going to World's Strongest Man, which is not only big for sponsorship, but just big for potential prize money.
Yeah.
To forgo that in order just to focus on this one record. So I think he's putting a lot of effort in, which you don't normally see.
No, I mean I couldn't agree more, and that's the thing. Like, I mean, I want to say the guy's been training for this one thing for like a year.
Yes. So ever since the last deadlift champs.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like the dedication to that one singular goal has to relate to something, in my opinion.
So you think you got it to his knees. So like it was pretty much like probably the top of his shins to his knees last year with a decent amount of training. So with a year's worth of squats
Specialist
and deadlifts. So what can he do? So I think there's some potential, and he has the levers and the
his levers are fucking perfect. And it's funny because he was another 105 guy.
It sure was.
But
he spent like a year. I think I had him on the podcast too. He had it for like a year or two, and then he went up. So he didn't spend as much time.
He didn't spend as much time as you, because I remember we ran like Britain's Strongest Man this is before I moved stateside. And we ran that contest at the gym, and he competed at it. But I remember him being there, and then he started gaining.
So is that when he had the 105 log record? Is that where he hit? Is that where he hit it?
It might have been around
like 374 or 170.
It was probably around that time at least. Yeah, and that would have been, I don't know. I'm trying to think of the year.
2011.
Probably 11 or 12, because I moved into 13, so it must have been right around there. But yeah, the size of Graham now is ridiculous. Like when I see him versus like what he was, it's wild. Like the transformation is absolutely insane.
It's fun because I think Graham kind of blew up. I also talked to Bish about his, because he went up to 105 around the same time, and his was more gradual. He was like 110, 120, 130. Yeah. I think he was 150 kilos at Worlds. I got to spend some time with him, which was fun because Adam Bishop is a class act, so it was fun. It's fun to hang out with him.
Do you have any like weight goal? Like, is there a sort of weight that you want
300.
to be at?
Yeah, come on. 5'11", 3/4 at 300. That'd be pretty cool.
I understand. I get it.
So yeah, I think but I think I want to get up to like 305 so I could cut down to be like a solid 295. I think. Okay. I think that's really the goal.
How have you how have you felt the difference with weight in terms of like just your moving stuff? I'm a little slower. I'm not probably a step off, but I've also been just focusing so much on the static side of the strength things. Not that it's. Of course, it's important for
just building in general, especially growing up. That's the biggest thing that people can never relate to. But that usually was towards the end of my 105, that was the biggest thing that I was getting points on. So I want to kind of continue that. And I was also kind of a great mover. So I still focus on the static side of things, but I got away from the cardio. So hopefully I can gain some weight, maybe 305, and then start implementing some of the more conditioning and building my athleticism again, because I still have the old programs and what I did back then in order to do that. And then some new ideas that I can kind of implement.
I think that's a big hurdle that's as you gain weight. Like even when I was competing in Scotland, I was like, still like 260, 270. So like a bigger guy, but smaller heavyweight. And I moved really well. And then when I moved over here, I was like, okay, I got to gain some weight and, be more statically strong and all that. And I feel like it's a big hurdle that a lot of athletes sort of come up against, where they pull back from the speed side of stuff and the athletic side of stuff. Mm-hmm. And it's actually potentially detrimental, in my opinion, as an overall athlete, because you can get statically stronger, but that other side is completely different,
It is important. But I think there's also a merit too of like everybody focuses on press. Like when you think about like the most time spent, they probably focus, it's probably pressing and deadlifting. But if you can beat people on the time they spend on the most, sometimes that could be important. But I'm not saying like people out of the gate should focus on this, but maybe if they're a little more mature. But what gets noticed is a big log and a big deadlift too. So I think I'm in a different place where I'm trying to just continue building my brand and all. So I have maybe potentially the luxury of focus on more of the static lifts, but as in general, as strongman, you want to be the most well-rounded athlete. Yeah. And of course, you're seeing someone like, I think right now, like, if you're looking at the very top level, like Mitch is like perfecting what Martins did of just podium every event and winning all these shows. So
it's to see what Mitch is doing right now is nothing short of incredible, to put it mildly, in my opinion. I just, it's sort of hard to fathom that he's only been in the sport like 3 or 4 years at this point.
Mm-hmm. I was listening to one of his YouTubes. He said he started in 2019 and he did a few contests. Of course, COVID hurt things, but 2022 is when he got noticed. So he competed for, like, he was kind of had strongman in his mind for 3 years before going to that. So I think he only had 4 shows leading into that first World's Strongest Man.
Dude. I'd never heard of the guy, and I remember seeing like a massive deadlift in some Australian contest before he moved back to Canada. Never heard of him, and then suddenly he just blew.
I think it was like that deadlift and like his running with a 1,000-pound yoke is what got him noticed and got him into as a reserve and then eventually as an athlete to World's Strongest Man. But yeah, I always try to dissect it. Of course, he's very athletic. He has kind of great genetics, but like, why is he able to come out and just trash all the best guys that were, I don't want to say trash, but he's beating all these guys. He has 10 international wins, and I think right now he's won, 5 of the last 7 majors. He lost to Brian last year. He lost to Tom this year, but besides that, he's won 5 out of the 7 majors. Yeah.
What do you think the difference is?
I want to say there's some component. It's not something that I would do because I don't like running, but there's some component to marathon running. You see that in someone like Andrew Clayton as well. Yep. Just loves to run. So the high endurance aspect. So I wasn't sure if that endurance training leading into strongman is noteworthy, but there's also the risk of like destroying your knees before getting into strongman. So, but he was able to do it young enough. So I think there is a component of that extreme endurance before you head into strongman training. And then he was able to get to World's Strongest Man with kind of minimal, I wouldn't call it baggage, but minimal injuries.
Yes. Yep.
So, and then when he got to World's Strongest Man, he performed so well, they got invited to every major show. So he's always competing on pristine equipment. And then he's very bright. So he's able to leverage the knowledge of someone like Lawrence Charles. Like right away, he started working with Lawrence. And he was able to take all the best things that Lawrence did and take that and add that to his own routine and add that to his own training. So I think he's very bright. So he's able to take up a lot of a lot of times where some guys, like even like myself, beat themselves up in order to get a World's Strongest Man, but he was extremely fresh and green getting into World's Strongest Man.
I would love to know.
And grew up in the professional system, which is.
I would love to know what impact his career has on his progression as an athlete as well. You know, from a physical therapy and training standpoint.
I think that's
like how that links in. You know. And I think that's probably one of the biggest reasons why he's actually, because I can't even think of an injury he's had.
He's talked about BPC and TB 500 for hamstring tears, but and that's muscle belly, not so much.
Tendon stuff.
Yes.
Okay. But yeah, like he just seems to be like continually perfecting. And the interesting thing that I saw over the off season, like, you know, from last year to this year, was him perfecting the jerk. Mm-hmm. Like for the axle of the Arnold. Maybe not perfecting it.
He's perfecting his own style.
Maybe let's just say adopting it then.
But he made his own jerk, right?
Yes.
It's a bent press and a split jerk together, which he's using like facets of both lifts, which is great. But it's his own unique. I wouldn't call it a split jerk because you don't bend press in a split jerk as well.
So with that, like, do you feel like that a desire to continually improve and, like, you know, look at all these little things in terms of like, okay, well, if I'm not strong with, you know, push press, I'm going to now try to figure something else out. Because I feel that's not super common these days.
I think he knows that he was athletic enough to implement a split jerk. I think even that same time we were talking about like him heading into Worlds, I think he hit like a 475 push press. So he already had like a really strong push press. So he's athletic enough to do a split jerk. So I think he just knew he was capable of doing that and seeked out. Again, he's just really good at seeking out top guys for information and for expertise. And obviously these guys want to work with him because he's just such a freak athlete and such a great athlete. So it makes sense.
What's your opinion on some of the controversy from Strongest Man on Earth show with like the squat and things like that?
That's a tough one. Because I was listening to Brian a little bit, and of course they were measuring all the different heights and items, but I think it was such a cool idea to do because in the basis it is a cool idea to do kind of like a Smith machine type of style. So it was pretty cool, but I think with some, like when you're trying to become like an industry leader in terms of competitions, I think you're gonna run into some items, and you can't. It's really hard to test those out. I think only Brian and Nick tested out the actual implement. So, but it's hard to get maybe another 5 or 6 pros to do it and to really kind of figure out the kinks before the competition. So I think they're still testing it out. So I don't want to be like too hard on Brian that like, oh, that kind of decided the contest in some people's eyes, because I think, and it's like someone like, for instance, like Austin Andrade is a great squatter, but he zeroed the event, and then if he got one squat, he would have beat Lucas. So that would have been a big opportunity. And then things could have changed between like Thor and I think Thor ended up getting a few reps still. So
I think he got 3. I want to say it was, which was surprising given his squatting leading into it.
Mm-hmm. So it was interesting. Lucas had a good explanation for it, just because kind of like the patterns change going into it. But I think that you couldn't foresee that. So hopefully they change it up for next year. Mm-hmm. But squat in general is just a really tough implement to have in a contest, and that's the reason why.
Yeah. Where do you see some of these top level shows going? Like, like we talked about, like, giants are having a niche, and now coming across the pond. Do you think that they're going to start having not a stranglehold, but like, do you think they're going to start having like this an explosion again? Because obviously there's been a resurgence of strongman, especially in the UK, with those major level shows, but we've not really had it here for quite a long time. Mm-hmm. Do you think it's coming with giants moving over? Do you think they're gonna give the competition to, or like maybe not give the competition, but compete with Strongest Man, or compete with Rogue, compete with Arnold, Where do you see the culture, the landscape going?
So, so you see the landscape for Giants Live?
This is the landscape for pro strongman, for top level pro strongman within the US.
I think just how much from when we originally started. I started in 2012. You started a little before then. Just how much it's come up. I think originally you only had 2 big shows. Now you have 4 major shows, and then the 2 originally big shows are now behind in prize money, like the Rogue and the Shaw are the top of the list in terms of big prize money for these different items. So I think, for instance, it's only going to grow from here and just grab more attention. And just as long as we keep getting athletes that are kind of relatable and be able to are willing to put themselves out there and build the sport. So like Mitch, of course, is huge on social media and he prides on stuff like that. But if we could have 9 other Mitch Hoopers like that, I think that would be pretty important. Just going out there, collaborating with different individuals. But I think a lot more. Can be done. I think not the knock in terms of like past World's Strongest Man winners, but they it wasn't until like Brian started his YouTube until it started getting really noticed. But for a while, like he would win the title and then the title kind of sat there, right? So I think it's always really important for different athletes to go out there and kind of raise their. I was really excited when Hafer Bjornsson won the World's Strongest Man in 2018 because he was had the biggest following at the time when it came to social media and just being involved in the mainstream, and that was going to project the sport. So I think it's just important to just those guys get out there. But in terms of contests, I think the more contests that happen out there, I don't think there's going to be an oversaturation. I think they're just going to keep building the market. You just see that even on the amateur level. Like right now, for like weight class athletes, there's more opportunity than ever, especially. I would say for under 105, so like the 90 kilos and 80 kilos, there's so many opportunities right now. So tons, it's the best time to be a strongman.
Yeah.
Strong woman too. Yes.
Talking of social media, what do you think? Because you see, this social media is growing like wildfire. From when it's like, I remember coming to the States, and it was like 2012, 2013, and Instagram was just starting. In the last decade, it's huge. What do you think the biggest? I'm trying to think of the word, not drawback, but like, what do you think holds athletes back from social media? Is it like what's the key to a good social media, in your opinion, for an athlete in this realm?
I would say the key to good social media is not afraid to put out content, and I think trial and error and finding their own niche, right?
Yeah.
But even at times myself, I don't know if you can relate, but just you're afraid to put out content because you don't know how it's going to react, or
Completely.
You don't want to spend a lot of time. Sometimes you see a 15-minute video, but as you know, it takes 3 hours to edit and all this time. So you want to make sure it's a good product. So.
Yeah.
But also, if people really focus on what people think, then potentially athletes won't get out there to compete in smaller shows and only focus on a couple of shows. I always think that competitors, if they're really focused on it, should compete as much as they can.
That's a great point. So, like, give me your take on this. When I was competing, I competed literally as much as I possibly could, and I found them.
How many competitions do you have under your belt?
I don't know. I mean, the year I tore my bicep, I had competed 13 days that year.
Okay.
I'm not sure how many total competitions, but what I find is what I found at that point was that the more I competed, the more robotic I became, the less mistakes I made. And nowadays it's like people are like, I compete twice, 3 times a year, and that's it. Detrimental, positive? Like, what's your take on it?
It depends where they're trying to take it. If they're treating it as a hobby, I think that's fine. But if they're trying to make waves or, I would say, break a new ceiling within the sport, then you got to compete a little more. You got to put yourself out there a little more. Even it is tough for weight class athletes because they're constantly cutting weights. So it's really hard for them to compete often unless they kind of stick around weight. Like my buddy like Matthew McKeegan or like a year cattle check in the 105s were always great examples because they always stayed roughly around weight and they were so maybe like 2 or 3 pounds over 231 and they could always make the cut. But on the American side, we always think like bigger is better. And they just sometimes focus on the 2 or 3 big. Now there's probably like 4 or 5 big shows on the 105 scene, but for a while there's only like 2 or 3. Myself, when I was in that position, I would seek out heavyweight shows because usually amateur heavy shows were the same weights at 105 pro shows. So I could compete, get the experience, but not have to cut weight. So it made a lot of fun.
In terms of, that's
did I answer your question, or was that
it did? It did, but also like so in terms of like from a heavyweight standpoint, like I almost wonder at times like when you've got people who they train, 12, 16, 20 week preps for one contest, is there a point of too long? Do you know what I mean? Like
sure,
like over specialization.
Absolutely, because then, for instance, you're focused on that one competition with 5 events, and then the next year they could have, if they're focused, let's say that was the Nationals, the Nationals could be 5 totally different events. Like they were great at log, but they stink at dumbbell.
Yep.
They're great at elevated deadlift, but they can't do it from the floor. So then they spend all that time where maybe if they focus on a little more of generalization, just focus on like squat, bench, deadlift. Like a great example, I think even we're just going back to someone like Mitch. I don't think Mitch even like over specialized. I think he's always focused on a great squat, a great bench, a great press, and then from there he kind of adds different things. I don't think he goes too crazy. Even on the power series that he does great, all he does is just does practice like pulling a T-bar, not T-bar, but like I think it's a
loading pin.
Rogue T-bar, just to like a certain height.
Yeah.
Right. So,
and that's the thing. Like for me, like I always found or at least my approach and what I found worked for me at least was that I trained like the general strength all year round. And then it became sort of like in season, it became like sort of like maintenance. But then like the event day was like the specialized, okay, we've got, hey, in 3 weeks or 2 months, we've got X contests with these events. We got to get familiar with this movement again. But then the general strength was always like, I feel like these days is like everyone, like I would press twice a week. So you do like a general push press on your pressing day, and then you do like log or you do dumbbell or whatever it was that was your specialist press. Same with like a deadlift. You'd probably deadlift or squat during the week and like, oh, you got to do a car deadlift? Okay, well, shit, we got to go and deadlift on event day too. And that always seemed to be like a very good way to, in my opinion, to put it together where you had your basis, but then you just added the other stuff in. And I just don't think that's the case anymore. Or doesn't seem to be the case.
I think it's changed. There's so many different programs out there that people are really kind of focusing on, and everybody has their different. There's so many coaches out there as well.
Yeah.
But I would say for the most part, I think that it's important to have a concentration in terms of what's going to make you a better athlete in your training, but also adhering for those certain contests. I think for weight classes, even for heavyweights, I think you only have like 2 great peaks a year.
Yeah.
So you got to choose what those competitions are. And then from there, you can still compete frequently, but just know that you might not be as peaked or you might have a different strength over it. But sometimes that general strength is better for a contest than very specified, specific.
Well, that's why I think Z did so well, because he would peak for the Arnold and peak for Worlds, but then he would compete however many weekends a year for SCL or whatever it was. But it was never a contest. It was like a training day, and it just so happened to be a contest. I think that seems to be like that was like the winning formula for him at least.
I think you told me he did like 10 or 12 contests like leading up to Worlds one year that you won. And he just competed and it made him very happy to lift all the weights overhead. And then he puts the weight down. But he just always just kept competing.
Yeah.
And that's why he's the one guy that has 84 international wins, right?
It's insane. To think about like the level of what he's got is just ridiculous. I remember we were at where was it? I was at the Arnold. We were working with him at the Arnold one year, and he's like, "I just bought a boat. If I don't win, no boat." I'm like, shit. It's like, well, there's your driving force. So, what do you feel is the next big evolution coming down the pipe for the sport? I mean, is it going to be the prize money? Is it going to be the viewership, the socials?
Ooh.
Like, where do you or maybe there's more than one, and maybe everything, and realistically, everything feeds into something too.
It's funny. Bobby Thompson mentioned a little bit. I think it was OSG or it might have been Worlds. It's all my Bobby Thompson conversations get wrapped into like one, so I never know when he said it. But he said it's the evolution is what when we start seeing more athletes hop into the sport of strongman from more professional, like for instance, like more Tom Evanses. Who did I speak with recently? Even Tristan Hoth was a kind of aspiring CFL football player that ended up doing strongman. So when we start seeing some of those potential college football player dropouts or top level wrestlers or top level Olympians heading into the sport, that's kind of when I think that's going to start kind of really growing the viewership. But I think right now, like the all the contests being on the stream, there was great coverage. But I think potentially more. I think what I want to see, we need more like Eddie documentaries. Yeah. We need more kind of get back onto the Netflix side of things.
Yep.
There's some stuff on Amazon. I think you still can get like Born Strong. Again, that was a great documentary. So I think that's one thing that we're missing is some of those streams that connected to the general population. I think even I remember when I was doing Strongman and they heard about Strongman, the first thing they brought up was either the first Eddie documentary on Netflix or the second one.
Yep.
Because both were pretty cool. So I think something like that needs to come back into. I think that evolution of the story, and then potentially if they get more in tune of like potential like reality shows or anything related to Strongman. But I think that would be probably the next evolution would be something that could connect the live or the mainstream to the viewership. Yeah.
Now, conversely, what do you think the biggest detriment and thing holding us back is?
Holding us back. I think that the best pros do a good job in terms of connecting with fans, but there's some athletes that don't do the best of jobs. I think that's a little more on the amateur side, so I can't say that. So let me rethink that answer. The biggest thing that's detrimental, because we are getting more live coverage. It would be great to see World's Strongest Man on ESPN again. Yeah. I think just that small switch. I know right now there's a lot of big TV contracts. Of course, the last conversation with Bryce, that's the reason why it's not live streamed. It's because there's TV contracts, and so potentially in 3 years, World's Strongest Man could be on TV, be live streamed, and also be on TV. I think getting back onto a big network like ESPN would be important. I know it's on CBS, but even my group. When my group aired on CBS, it was at 2:00 on a Saturday. I don't know how many people are watching CBS 2:00 if they're not at a bar drinking. Yeah. Right? But I remember when my Clash on the Coast was on ESPN, I had random, even candidates reaching out to me saying, I saw you on TV at a bar or something like that. So I think getting back onto ESPN would be important. But what's holding us back? I think I just want to maybe just go back to just making sure the top athletes do a good job getting out there. I think even just trouble for me, like I'm internationally known, but regionally I don't have a presence, right? So like Boston, like if I ever throw a contest in Boston, it would be really hard for me, just because there's no really regional presence. Of course, we have great gyms like Titan Barbell and TPS north of Boston, but we don't have like anything that really would connect strongman to Boston. We don't have like pro strongman hanging out with NBA players or baseball players. So somehow integrating that, getting that onto the mainstream. But I think it just has to be better. The top athletes have to do more. But we've already asked so much of them to do.
Do you think it's so? Yeah. So like obviously we ask a lot of them to do so. But do you think that's a responsibility of the top level athletes? Quote unquote responsibility in terms of to ensure that the growth keeps pushing forward.
It's not like a written down responsibility, but it's not a responsibility, but it's more of a encouragement. Yeah. They're encouraged. They should be encouraged.
Sure. Going back to the whole live stream of Worlds, having been around the TV production of Worlds, I know, or at least I know what it used to be like. don't know what it's like nowadays, but how do you think that form, like, do you think it's possible to go to a live stream format with Worlds being the way it is? Because there's a lot of waiting
If they had
around.
a constant stream, I think they could do it. People would have to go back and forth and watch it.
Yep.
I don't think they should change the way they format it, but they really just be doing a favor to the fans.
Yep.
And then the production, when they came out with production, then you get the new viewers,
Yep.
right? But I think it would be just a tribute to the fans, potentially bringing new revenue,
Sure.
and then be able to cut that up. But it's just so complicated because World's Strongest Man does go out to so many different countries. There's so many different channels, so
Yeah.
many different productions. So how do you do that while making everybody happy?
Yeah.
So
I remember like when I was crewing at Worlds and being tested at Worlds, it was like, you've got, at that point in time, it was really only like UK, US. I mean, it was showing other places, but those were the two big like crews there. So you had like the US people doing all their intros, and then you'd have the UK people do all their intros for their show. And it just seemed to, it was a lot. I don't know if it's still the same or not, but it just seemed that was like a lot of downtime between events,
Mm-hmm.
It's-
I didn't mind. I didn't mind too much. That we had at least 3 events a day.
Yeah.
I didn't mind too much of downtime, and then of course you had the catered lunch, which was fun and all.
yeah.
But for the most part, I think you got to remember it's kind of a show, but at least doing 3 events in a day is not. I
Yeah.
don't think it was. If it was 2 events, I think that might have been a little tough.
Sure. Yeah.
If you're there that whole time.
Yeah. I mean, I think that was some of the stuff that we did. It's like, I remember being in China doing fingers. We had I think we had 4 of the 5 groups doing fingers, and it wasn't a quick reset. So it was like, a 4-hour process, if not longer, to get through those 4 groups, and then you're into another event, and that's it for the day. So that's where I'm intrigued as to, from a live stream format, like how would it work? How could you do it? And all
I
that
think
sort of stuff.
you would just have a stream.
Have a
just going
camera on, and that's it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And just hopefully you would have a roaming camera, get just maybe the potential the same angles, but it would just be just so you kind of adhere to the fans, but you're still focusing on the main production that's going to bring in the big money, bring it what pays the athletes, what pays for the production, and be able to get new viewers.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I really think that's probably the only way to do it, really.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of what else to ask you now. I've sort of like depleted my bank a little bit.
A little bit. What one of my favorites is on podcasts. I'm always so positive, but at the end I always say like, what grinds your gears? But in the strongman world, what grinds your gears when it comes to the world of strongman, or even like just lifting in the gym in general?
I think in terms of from a strongman perspective, the thing that's hard for me, having been in this sport for so long, is some of the, I'm trying to be politically correct here, some of the perspectives of where the sport is in terms of some people who are maybe newer to the sport don't understand, 15 years ago, a high level contest was a parking level show. It's in a parking lot. And now it's a case of like, you've got arenas or convention centers or, wherever they're doing it. And it's completely like the level of contest is raised, but I don't know if the appreciation for the level of contest is up there yet, if that makes sense, I think that's probably one of my biggest struggles being a more seasoned athlete around the sport. Mm-hmm. What would you say for yours?
Of course, I've had many over the times. I said, like, my last good example is, I think lately it's just clickbaity YouTubes.
Yeah.
I know YouTubes are important to get out there, but I watched a whole video of Paulo Dwyer, hopefully thinking that he was going to talk about, he's a Cerberus athlete, right?
Yeah.
Pa?
Yeah.
Hello, Pa, if you're listening. He was talking about why Mitch Hooper is as good as he is. And so I listened to the first 10 minutes, and the last 3 minutes, he's like, Mitch recovers really well during the events. He doesn't do physio, doesn't do anything. He just walks a lot. And then he's like, that end. And then he's like, it's like, we got a little closer to why Mitch is good, but so he made a whole video just saying that Mitch walks more than other athletes, and that's why he's as good as he is. Like, I know like Stan Effernan walks are good after meals, and that's why he does a lot of the walks. He worked with Stan, and I do a lot of the same things, but I think he has to come back, make a better video in terms of better than individuals that are walking. So that was a good one. For a while, it was like just people focusing on too much on like of course, too many tripods in the gym. That was always a good pet peeve. I think even a good one, even just regular gym culture is just this entitlement around kind of machines and like individuals that are supersetting or they spend like the other day, my wife she was starting to work on cable machines, but this kid wanted to do pec flies. He left his phone there, but he wasn't there for 10 minutes. So she hopped on one of the machines, and kid's like, "Oh, I'm using those machines," and then he did like 50-pound pec flies for the next 45 minutes because I was just on the other side doing free weights because I was just doing like my 10 and 15-pound bicep recovery drills, right? So I got to watch. So there's like entitlement within like I would say the gym pop, but that's always kind of been there. So what other ones? I don't know. I would say there's a lot more the other things that kind of grind my gears, but yeah, it's not coming to me right now.
I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head with the gym entitlement side of stuff. You know, it's like we have a Planet Fitness down the street from us. We'll go there and do like, hey, we're doing a pump workout just to get some sort of movement in at some point in time here and there. And it's interesting to see people like who are maybe not super experienced in the gym and how they approach different things. And I feel like I feel that maybe lifting culture has got to the point where, like back in my day, you know, making myself sound old, there was no like worry to go and say to somebody, "Hey, have you tried doing it this way?" You know, like, "Oh, hey, like, you know, just be careful with the way you're doing whatever movement." And I feel like there's no real. It's like it's walking a fine line of people take things completely the wrong way, and it's not seen as advice anymore, if that makes sense.
Interesting. Yeah, more of an attack or...
Yeah. And it's even to the point, like I saw a guy, not a guy, a younger kid, he must have been like, 17, 18, maybe not even that old. And he was like trying to do like one-arm cable curls. And he had like 2/3 of the stack. And he's just like everything, and he's, arching back and everything. I was like, dude, you might not want to do that. It's like you're gonna screw yourself up. And I was like, I've already popped the bicep. Like, don't go there, type of thing. Like, you can have a hell of a lot more gains doing, strict curls or whatever it may be, and actually having muscle activation in that bicep versus, shoulder or pec or whatever else. And he looked at me like I had, 3 heads. I was like, okay, dude, like you do you. And it's just interesting to see that the sort of evolution of the gym culture as well.
Absolutely. But not to continue, not to cut you off, but I was just thinking back to your other answer, how do you improve strongman going forward? I think we got to get to these kids.
Yeah.
So like CrossFit does a good job in terms of CrossFit affiliate gyms. So somehow having one of the federation doing strongman affiliate gyms, but also somehow getting strongman more involved in the regular strength training routine of most high schools. So if strongman was a presence, but I think it's tough because I think right now there's more of a progressive culture, and at least in the U.S., that's getting away from weightlifting or kind of strength sports or masculinity. So I think it would be really tough to push that, but I think that's what people need.
It's interesting that you raised the whole CrossFit thing, because I said this to somebody recently where I think what holds strongman back compared to CrossFit is with CrossFit, you've got, firstly, it looks more attainable. But then you can go to a CrossFit gym and you can do CrossFit. Like you can do a CrossFit workout. You can, you might not compete, but you can do CrossFit. Doing strongman as a workout is completely different, And I think that's maybe like if there was a way that you could incorporate strongman into some sort of class-based functional training methodology.
It would be lighter, kind of like
lighter.
How CrossFit even does strongman items now.
Yeah. It's just trying to find that balance point. Like if you can get it to a point where you can have people see the sport and coming into the sport, or maybe not coming into the sport, but coming into the methodology, like you said about like high schools and all that sort of stuff. I think that would be a big driving force. And then to touch upon what you said about like the lack of masculinity and stuff like that, like, where do you think that started from? Or maybe not where, but when do you feel like that lack of, or maybe not lack, but reduction in physical prowess?
1950s maybe. I think there used to be a video of like all the kids doing calisthenics, and they're all of them able to do pull-ups and monkey bars and everything like that. And I think right now there's just an absence away from that type of, in the gym. There's more, I think people, even when I was going to school, and I graduated high school in 2007, people were able to get dismissed from class, more from gym classes and stuff like that. So they got to, and we didn't really train in too much in the gym. Even in college, there wasn't like a good enough like strength program. I didn't think so until I started getting more involved into the local scene at TPS. But I think they just got away from like the strength aspect. And like right now, even when individuals get older, it's more important to have more muscle mass around the joints because that improves their quality of life. So somehow integrating that, but I think it's been progressively kind of getting worse since like the 1950s, and that's just based off of this articles or research that I've seen. Just getting away from the kind of physical prowess.
I feel like we had like a sort of resurgence, and obviously this is talking from outside looking in terms of looking at Hollywood and stuff like that. You had a sort of resurgence of like that fitness, not fitness, but like muscular physique and all that stuff in like late 80s, early 90s and stuff like that. Schwarzenegger, Stallone, Van Damme, and all that sort of stuff. And then it shifted again, late 90s, early 2000s into what it is maybe now. Do you think any of that stuff affects it in terms of like it's maybe not as cool to be big and muscle bound and stuff like that these days?
I think potentially. So that's like, of course, movies at the highest levels, right? Yeah. But you still see even like the pro wrestlers now still getting a lot of jobs. But even like, for instance, Batista was a great wrestler, but he wants to get smaller so he can do like more active acting roles. I think it's they got away from the traditional action hero, right? But I think for the most part, there just has to be. I think just kind of starts almost at the youth level, just kind of more involvement, and you see even sometimes with either the Novikovs or the Pavlo Koriakos of the world, they started strongman so young, and that's why they're so good. So imagine if some of the other athletes were involved in strength training young. When did you start strength training?
I started lifting weights at like 12 years old. I had like a barbell set in my room, and then I lied about my age to get into the gym at like 15 and a half because like it was a 16. You had to be 16 to go to the gym. All right. in our village, and I lied about my age to get in, and then I started strongman. Trying to think. My first contest was like a week before my 18th birthday.
Oh wow!
So yeah,
so you start really early.
I've been involved in strongman almost 20 years. It'll be 20 years next May.
All right. I started in middle school, but it wasn't the push. If it wasn't for like the push through like my older brother and my mom to get at me and long. So like she's like, whatever my brother's doing, like that's what my mom had me do. So I got lucky. Yeah. But at that gym that I went to when I was in 7th grade, that's the first time I ever saw a log, and that's the last time really I saw a log even in the area.
Yeah.
But this gentleman named Joe Hayes, who was in the South Shore, just had a log there. Like, that's a pretty cool implement.
Yeah, so like I started doing strongman. Like I just sort of fell into it. Like they were doing what's it called? There was like a fundraiser for a tsunami. Like I think it was like a 2003 tsunami or something, a 2004 tsunami. And they were doing a fundraiser for it. I went and watched, and then the next year I competed in it, and it's like I started lifting because of Schwarzenegger, WWF, WWE, all that sort of stuff. And I mean, I was a bigger kid as well, so I mean, I graduated high school at 260, and I think not a good 260. I'll add that, but it was like that was the driving force. It was always like seeing that was like That was what the masculine figure was type of thing, And as soon as I started strongman, I was just like, something changed within me in terms of like, I'm like, man, I'm actually good at this. This is the first sport that I'm actually good at naturally, you know, and I don't have to really think about what I'm doing. So it was really interesting to then develop, realistically develop into an adult through strongman, or with strongman on the side, maybe is the better term.
Yeah, that's a pretty good point. But just we got to reach these kids. I think that's what's important, and that's like the grassroots is important. You see what the NFL does; they have flag football so early, so somehow we'll be able to incorporate that. But I think right now, you have so many kids being exposed through strongman through their parents. So eventually, we're going to start seeing second generational pro athletes. And I don't think there has been actually, I met one kid at Arnold Europe. He was the son of someone that took second behind Magnus for Magnuson in one of his World's Strongest Man.
Was it Fekete?
He's from Denmark.
I
forget his name on top of my head. I don't know if Sarah can look up all Magnus for Magnuson's wins on Strongman archives and see, but he was
maybe Regan Vagadal.
Huh?
It was Regan Vagadal. He was from Denmark, I think.
Will I be able to pronounce it? Is
that is a good question.
But I know, like talking about second generation, I know there was like Laszlo Fekete from, I want to say Laszlo was from Hungary. His son competed with him at one point. And then in terms of the only other second generation I can think of now is Bubba Pritchett.
Yes, exactly.
Which is, dude, he is something else.
And so it's great that OSG has a teen class, so that's only going to grow within competition. So then it's interesting because I had a young kid come up to me the other day. He started getting into lifting. I started going to more of because kind of a gym in Scituate just because it's only like 5 minutes from my house. And he didn't play many sports because he has asthma, but he wants to do like weightlifting. So he just asked for programs. I'm like, you're 15 years old. You pick a program online from someone reputable. You can take that. You'll definitely put on strength no matter what. Usually, if you stick to it.
Well, it's the same as like, you know, like my wife Michelle has a young kid. I can't remember how old he is. But he's, you know, a training client from the physical therapy side of stuff. And I think he came to her for an injury or something, and then he started lifting, and he loves it. Like that's him. Like, and it's so cool to see those sort of athletes come through where like they get the bug, you know, as Kaz says, they get bit by the iron snake, and then it's like that just shapes them as a person type of thing, you know. And it's really, for me, it's really cool to see because I think that it leads to a lot of development, like the challenges within a gym facility or gym setting, maybe rather than facility, and going through some sort of progressive overload program. I think the developmental side of that, you know, both physically and mentally, is second to none. You know.
Be interesting. Well, eventually. Oh, do you have an answer for us?
What year is it? Do you know?
Oh, well, it was either one of four Magnus for Magnuson's wins. So there was a Denmark gentleman that took second.
Come on, Sarah, you're on the clock now.
When did Sarah
was
start?
it Iceland's?
When do you start strongman or competing or get involved into weightlifting?
I think I started strongman 8 years ago.
All right.
I think. The gym, like 10. Like I did 3 bikini contests before.
All right.
Yeah, before I did strongman, and my gym was like known for strongman. So like in between, I was like, I kind of want to like try that. So I kind of got into it, and I was just kind of naturally good at like stones and farmers because I'm long and
Sure.
and tall, and I've always had a decent grip. But yeah, I just got the bug, and we always did strongman Sundays, and it was like the culture of the people. And it was the fact that it was an individual sport, which I've never really had, but also it was a team aspect in a sense of our whole gym was kind of doing
Sure.
it. Yeah. Very alluring in that sense.
Yes. While you're still looking up, there's the other, it's funny because when we were trying to predict winners of different competitions, try to figure out who has the best training crew. Like right now you're seeing this year alone, like Austin Andrade in San Antonio with heavy metal. He has a great training crew, great training partners. Lucas Haddon has great training partners, great coach, great atmosphere. So sometimes the individuals that have the strongman crews is important. So like you would kind of think of like you would bet like he has a great strongman crew, great support. He could do really well. But then you think about betting, putting money. So we get sports betting to strongman. There we go. We need sports betting in strongman.
With Vegas coming up, like honestly, it's
I'm surprised there's nothing on there.
No, there's literally should be because that's what's gonna. Well, it'll make it fun too for people who have no idea what strongman is. It's like the same thing with golf. Like not a lot of people necessarily.
They're gonna bet on the big guys, so they're gonna bet on Thor. But then you see like Mitchell Hooper walk in and
and then you see the fun about the sport.
There we go. We brainstorm betting.
So here's talking of that.
And then making odds like 6-2, 5-7-1, outside chance 30-1.
Oh my god, I'd be lost with it all. Going back to the strongman crew, how important do you think it is? Because that was always a big thing for me developing in the sport.
Yes, I think it's important, especially within probably years 1 to 6. Yeah. I think it's really important because that's a lot of times they learn from someone and they're happy to pass it down. Even myself, I'm happy to pass it down now. I'm in year 13.
Yeah.
So I think it's just important just you have other individuals doing it and you can. For instance, when I first competed, I saw my ref was Rob Kearney, and Rob went out to do his things. But I followed Rob's journey ever since. I'm like, oh, there's nationals, and then even when I got to nationals, I'm like, oh, he's over there doing a log championship. Oh, he's moving up heavyweight and doing all the things. So like Rob paved the way for just like even like 105s in America to go into the heavyweight scene. Yeah, but just. They have so much knowledge that they can pass down, and the Strongman Saturdays is such a great time. So maybe another way is just strong leaders having gym communities is
that
important.
Was a big thing for me. Was like you've got. I'm trying to think of how big our crew was at times. There was times it was easily 10, 15 people, and everyone's got their own little way of doing something, and I feel like if you don't train in a crew, at least here and there at some point in time, like you just lose so much potential knowledge, like even from like I always said, like if I go to a contest and I could win every single event, but if I don't learn something, then I've done myself a disservice. And it was even stuff like, I remember being at Worlds as a tester and talking to one of the guys competing, being like, hey, if you try to do the sandbag this way, it'll save you like 2 seconds. He's like, oh shit, I never thought about that. And it's just funny to see someone of like that high level not have that little bit of like extra something, if that makes sense. And I wonder like, okay, is it missed because of training environment, training partners, et cetera, et cetera?
So strong crews and sports betting.
There you go. That's what we've got.
Okay, just think about this. And then with the online apps, I remember I went to the Saratoga racetracks recently. That was the first time I did like a race track experience, and that was a lot of fun. But just kind of just put in betting so you can.
Yeah,
I gotta go start practicing now. I'm not done any of this stuff.
No.
But it would be crazy just to think of like, and then like how do you build that committee of that who makes the odds and looking at every major competition. So I think that's the evolution.
Great way to get people involved.
Yes, because people like money and losing money.
Yeah.
Addicting.
So strongman needs to kind of support more degeneracy and
I mean,
in the casinos. Yeah.
Also, I'd like to hear your thoughts on standardizing strongman because we have this conversation a lot with people, and it does end up getting a little heated with some people because people are so invested and rooted in strongman and like they love the grit of it that they don't want to give that part up necessarily and like conform to like what strongman or what CrossFit kind of does.
Because originally what the strongman is that it's whoever is strongest on the day and doesn't matter what the implements are. I think there could be a segment of it. But first of all, what makes strongman great originally is that it's not standardized, that you can have 5 different events. But I think there could always be like a league of their own, potentially that focus on 5 particular events, maybe 6, that could be pitched up all the way into like the Olympics. That's the reason why it's on the Olympics on top of course, the big one is drug testing is because there's no standardization. It'd be really drugged athletes. But we could easily have like a decathlon of strongman events of natural athletes at the Olympics. And that could be its own segment of strongman. Yeah. and then I don't think that would take away from the rest of the sport when you have something like a different segment of the business that's standardized, that these logs look here, there. So
Yeah.
and that would just involve more money. But I also think, because I asked Brycey recently what his thoughts of being a former Olympian about strongman. It would just be, I think, just of course the IOC items. But I brought up the fact too that they also are trying to get away from, like, they try to cancel wrestling. Of course, I was a wrestler myself, so I didn't like that. They try to get rid of weightlifting at one point.
Yeah.
Of course, one of the two items that were like almost initially started with like lifting and wrestling. It's almost like it almost goes hand in hand like with like running,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Like pure physical feats, and they're trying to get away from that in the Olympics. So I don't know if strongman would fly in the Olympics, but back to your point of standardization, I think it could have its own segment, but I think the sport itself is always going to be random and unique.
Yeah. That's like the heart of it. I feel like. But,
Yeah.
I could not find it.
You couldn't find it?
No,
All right.
I must just suck at Googling.
But there'll be more second generational athletes soon.
Yeah.
So you could potentially see Koa Stoltman out there. I think Zadrunas had a boy recently, so there could be little
Can you
Zadrunas
imagine
coming out in
this?
20 years.
A little presser.
Yeah.
He's already got like a world record.
I think this year you have Paul Smith having Nancy Smith, but I think it shows you could have a girl strongman out there.
Yep.
Same thing with Hooper's little girl. Who else had kids this year? There's quite a few. So there's going to be, I think a lot of, probably in the next 5-10 years that we'll see second race. We'll definitely see, of course, Bubba Pritchard and Magnus Hall going head to head. I think they're similar age. I think Bubba's a couple of years older.
I think he's a couple of years, yeah. And Bubba's just he pulled like 900 on a frame.
Dude, Bubba?
Dude, it was huge. Maybe not 9, maybe it was 8. And I was like, this kid's 13 years old.
That's crazy.
Yeah, he's clean and press in 225. Like,
yes, I saw that. Yeah.
I was like, oh my god.
But
like 13.
But like, for instance, like, actually it's pretty good. Like, for instance, like Magnus Hall, I think he has tens of thousands of YouTube subscribers, right? If it's a bunch of young kids following him, he's gonna be a great role model.
I think Bubba's got like 30,000 followers.
He's destroying me.
He's yeah. But he is so impressive. And it's just like it's so funny. Like, I remember like Bubba on a bus at Worlds when, like, Jerry competing there, being just like this little kid. Like, I don't know, I'm trying to think. 4, maybe 5 at the tops, and to see what he's developed into is insane to me. It's he's gonna be a force, to put it mildly.
Oh yeah,
it's gonna be so cool to see when he's like 18, 19, 20, like what he's doing, because this he's doing right now is fucking insane for that age.
Again, it's all about these kids.
Dude, I have to agree with you. That's the sport. That's the future, literally. So let's to wrap it up. Where can people find you if they want to do like coaching, seminars? I know you do seminars and all that sort of stuff.
Absolutely. So I'm ramping up my seminars. I'm going to be in Bowling Green. Me and Justin Loy and Tyler Young are figuring out a date sometime in October. So keep your eyes out there. I want to try to schedule one close to here. Most likely will be Total Performance Sports in the new location in Malden. So keep your eye out there. Instagram, I'm Cambi Dude. TikTok, I'm Cambi Dude Cambi. YouTube, I'm Cambi Dude. I'm also recently on Twitch. So yeah, Cambi Dude is really the theme across all the different ones. I do have a Discord and all, but I don't really use it. But the main 3 would probably be TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. Coaching wise, I'm just ramping up press specific coaching. So if you're trying to become a press master like myself, I encourage it, but I also don't want to be your forever coach. I want to teach you how to press. I want to show you some programming, and then I want you to go out and become your own person. But I'm eventually I was waiting until probably September, like right now, August, sleepy time a little bit, right? So in September, I'll be posting more about press specific coaching.
Nice, dude.
And then, just hopefully you'll see me back on the Giants Live, potentially World Strongest Man next year. And that's the goal.
Love it.
Yes, healthy.
That's the main. Yeah. That's the main goal.
Yes.
Hey, well, Cambi, thank you again for coming.
Well, Ken, it's great to see you. Of course, it's great that we can stay connected after all these years.
Yeah, it's a long time.
Yes.
I appreciate you taking the drive up, and it's good, dude. Thank you.
Absolutely.